Good morning, and welcome to the Cyber Smart Morning News Update. With the always evolving world of cyber threats and defense, you need a source you can trust. FBI retired Special Agent Darren Mott guides you through today's intricate cyber landscape and brings you the latest headlines and insights and what it means to you. Let's dive into today's cyber news.
Good morning, friends. It is July 31st, 2024. This is the Cyber Smart Morning News Update. I'm your host, retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Darren Mott, and author of the new book, Get Cyber Smart, a user-friendly guide to protecting your family, your business, and yourself online, available at Amazon. And coming Friday, for those of you who like my content, for the dozens of you that pay attention, I have a new newsletter coming out. It's called Get Cyber Smart Behind the Screens. So it'll be 3 stories or 3 points to make every Friday with my writing's a little different than my talking. Actually, it's kind of the same, but so you'll kind of, if you read it in my voice, you'll kind of hear what I'm saying on that. But that's coming out from my Substack. So if you want to participate in that, feel free to do so. Let's get into it. I only have 5 stories today. I just finished the Tactical Cyber podcast with Paul Perry, with our special guest, Scott Ockenbaum, on protecting the family, tactical advice for protecting your family at home. So go ahead and check that out at your favorite podcast platform. It's also on the Tactical Cyber and the Get Cyber Smart YouTube channels, as well as on LinkedIn. So if you have problems finding it, you can email me, Darren, the Cyber Guy. I can help you get to it. All right, first news story. And as always, all the articles mentioned in this podcast are listed in the show notes for your future reading, because I will not read the whole article. So this is from Ars Technica. Ashley Bellinger reporting, Kids Online Safety Act passes Senate despite concerns it will harm kids. How is that so? Good question. And I'll be honest, I have not really paid attention to this particular bill going through. I should have, but let's kind of see what this says. The Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA, easily passed the Senate today, which was yesterday, this July 30th, despite this critics' concerns that the bill may risk creating more harm than good for kids, and perhaps censor speech for online users of all ages if it's signed into law. KOSA received broad bipartisan support in the Senate, passing 91-3. Alongside the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act 2.0. So COPA already exists. This is a revision of that. Both laws seek to control how much data can be collected from minors, as well as regulate the platform features that could harm children's mental health. Now, that's an interesting point to that, because who determines what's harmful to mental health? But maybe that's a discussion that a bureaucrat will eventually have. The only people who opposed it were Senators Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, and Mike Lee, Republican of Utah. In an op-ed for the Courier-Journal, Paul argued that KOSA imposes a duty of care to mitigate harms to minors on their platforms that will not only stifle free speech, but will deprive Americans of the benefits of our technological advances. I don't necessarily not agree with that, if that makes any sense. I mean, I think he's kind of right there, especially this whole thing where features that could harm children's mental health, that is not going to be well defined, and that's going to allow tech companies to really restrict things if they so choose to do so. So that's, I think, where the problem is going to be. But with a divided Congress, who knows if it'll even get passed? Hard to say. I mean, putting the word kids in it doesn't mean it's a good idea, but that's kind of what politicians are doing to kind of try to protect it. Also from this article, Paul argued that what was considered harmful to kids was subjective, my point, noting that a key flaw with KOSA was that KOSA does not explicitly define the term mental health disorder. And that is where the problem's going to be, an undefined term. So depending on who's in charge, we'll make the definition and it will suck. So that's kind of where that's going. And we can't, let's be honest, our Congress cannot do the simple things when it comes to cybersecurity. So why we would expect them to do it here? Do I fault them for wanting to protect kids? No, I certainly do not fault them for that. I just think that they probably just don't understand what they're doing, because they're not exactly the brightest bulbs in the batch. All right, you can read more on that if you want, but this is probably going to be an interesting argument going forward. I'm sure I'll have more comments on it as it goes to the House and does all that kind of stuff. But for right now, it's just a bill that passed the Senate. It's not law yet. With a presidential election going on, no one's signing this anytime soon. So we will probably revisit this probably in 2025. All right, from tomsguide.com, this is Anthony Spadafora reporting. 4.3 million people hit in massive healthcare data breach, full names, addresses, and social security numbers exposed online. If you have a health savings account, or HSA, to pay for medical expenses, your personal information may have been exposed online in a massive data breach, which affects 4.3 million people in the U.S. As reported by Bleeping Computer, the HSA provider Health Equity has disclosed that it suffered a data breach in which the personal information of millions of Americans was stolen by hackers. According to a Form 8K filing submitted to the SEC at the beginning of July, the hackers gained access to this sensitive health data after using a partner's compromised credentials. How many times have you heard me say that? And this is somebody else. This is a third-party credentials. So while the investigation revealed that the breach occurred back in March, that's not good. Health Equity verified that this was the case at the end of June following an internal investigation. So the bad guys were in there for a long time, which allowed them to get 4.3 million bits of information. So does it say what information was taken? It does not exactly. Do we know what to do now if your data is exposed? But it doesn't say what data other than date of birth, name, social security number, which that's bad enough, right? So if you are a client, customer, whatever, of Health Equity, you can expect a letter in the mail that gives you a free year of credit monitoring. But you're going to deal with this problem for the rest of your life because now your information is collated with all the other information. I said it all the time. It's a problem. And 1 year of credit monitoring ain't going to do it for you. I mean, certainly take them up on it, but you're still going to have to do some stuff on your own for the rest of your life to protect your own personal data. And again, will we find out exactly how they got in? Well, stolen credentials, that's pretty much how they got in. But what they did while they were in there, that's interesting to see how that happened. BleepingComputer.com, Lawrence Abrams reporting, Dark Angels ransomware receives record-breaking $75 million ransom. Boy, that almost makes me want to get into the business. A Fortune 50 company, Fortune 50, so one of the big ones, paid a record-breaking $75 million ransom payment to Dark Angels ransomware gang, according to a report by Zscaler Threat Labs. In early 2024, Threat Labs uncovered a victim who paid Dark Angels $75 million, higher than any publicly known amount, an achievement that's bound to attract the interest of other attackers looking to replicate such success by adopting their key tactics, which they describe below in this article. And the point here being, this is why ransomware works. People pay the ransom. Now, we can argue they shouldn't, and they should be, where you lose me is where you say we should charge people who pay ransom, because this is just a company trying to get their data back. They're trying to stay alive. Now, it's a Fortune 50 company. They could probably afford the $75 million without too much damage, but still, that's a lot of money. I mean, no company is going to enjoy that. Plus, they'll pass it down to consumer, so that's not good either. So this beats out the last known largest ransom payment, which was $40 million, which was paid by insurance giant CNA after suffering an Evil Core ransomware attack. Now, they didn't say who the company was, but you can narrow it down to 50. So figure who the top 50 are, and you can kind of, I don't know if you can guess it, but you can assume it's one of them if you want to. I have no idea. But, the point being here, if they're a Fortune 50 company, they should have had controls and stuff in place to protect themselves from this. Clearly, they didn't. Now, how did the bad guys get in? I don't know. Let's see if it says. Dark Angels, a ransomware operation launched in May 2022. Let's see if it says what they did. When they gained access to the Windows domain controller, the threat actors deploy the ransomware to encrypt all devices. Okay, that's how they do it. Doesn't say how they got in. My guess is they had credentials from someone. In the attack, actually, this is from Johnson Control. They list some other attacks of what this group does. And that's kind of it. But the point being here, again, we'll probably never know how they got in, which would be great because for the other 49 of the top 50 companies in the country, they'd probably like to know so they could make sure that their system won't get compromised if they have similar designs in their network. But, it's a dream I have. It's a dream. I dream a long dream of having postmortems, but I rarely seem to get them. All right, from the dailyhodl.com, this is the staff reporting. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America refused to reimburse $880 million to customers. They are then accused of repeated relentless failure to protect victims of fraud. I do not disagree with that. The U.S. Senate investigation is shedding light on just how often America's big banks refuse to reimburse victims of fraud. The Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations says JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America collectively refused to reimburse $880 million in Zelle transactions that customers reported as fraud between 2021 and 2023. Zelle is a payment app similar to Venmo or PayPal, things like that, where you can send money to another Zelle user. Specifically, the banks refused to reimburse $320 million to customers who were hit by unauthorized transactions and rejected an additional $560 million in reimbursement to customers who were tricked into authorizing an illicit transaction. So what the banks are saying is, you made the mistake, bummer for you, which, again, I guess if you're a customer of one of these banks, maybe go somewhere else. But it's not to say that the new bank you go to won't do the same thing. So this is why it's incumbent on people to understand the threats targeting them so that they can recognize these threats. But let's be honest, chances are a lot of these people were probably seniors who didn't know any better, didn't know what Zelle was told how to download it, told how to use it, and told where to send the money. Now, it's a bummer on the bank that they can't help train their employees, but let's be honest, the banks don't care. Obviously, clearly, these three certainly don't care. But as a user, what do you have to do? You have to educate yourself on these kind of scams and be aware of them, look for them, and be suspicious of transactions that just don't seem to make sense. Only use those apps for people you know. If you've never met anyone online, if someone's selling something online and they say, hey, use Zelle, don't do it. Figure out another way to do it that's a little safer. One of the banks will say that often it's the fraudsters and con artists who trick consumers into transferring money. No question that consumers should be on alert, but this is not an excuse. That is no excuse for the repeated relentless failure of the banks and Zelle to reimburse when they should be doing better to protect customers. I agree with that. That's from Senator Rick Blumenthal, said that in a Senate hearing. Now, the banks care what the senators have to say? Probably not, because the senators aren't going to do anything to protect against it, but it is what it is. So, I report that because it's an interesting story and it's very unfortunate, but it's kind of the world we're in. This is why awareness is so important and understanding the threats out there so you do not become a victim. CyBUrnews.com, Ernestus Naparis, Gold Rush for Data. Paris 2024 Olympic apps are eavesdropping on users. Big shocker. Apps for the Paris Olympic Games are tracking users, extracting private data, and peddling it to advertisers and big tech. Moreover, their overreaching capabilities exceed what's being declared. That's no good. The Paris 2024 Olympics Act, which has been downloaded more than 10 million times, will be a personal companion for the Games, providing schedules, breaking news, medal results, insights into events, qualifiers, and much more. It also collects your data, such as your web browsing history, and beams it to advertisers. It asks for multiple dangerous permissions that allows it to tap into the deepest secrets you may have on your Android phone. So it appears as an Android problem. Well, maybe not. Let's see. The International Olympic Committee openly admits it collects personal data, builds user profiles, and shares the data with advertisers, including Facebook, Google, Apple, and X. IOC told CyBUr News that multiple permissions are needed to give the best possible experience. So my point here being, don't use this freaking app. This is ridiculous. I mean, they're outright saying we're taking your data and we're sharing it. I mean, why do they need my web browser information? I don't have the app, but why would they need your web browser information? But these application hungry devices don't care. So just be aware of it. So again, I make the point, if you are an Olympics fan, don't use the app. Go to ESPN.com and find out when the events are. I mean, unless you're really enjoying the experience of the app and you don't mind giving up this information, the fact that they're saying there's a lot of hoops you got to go through to give up this information, I believe that's bullcrap. Chances are it's just you have to keep clicking buttons to get what you want, and most people will click the buttons to get what they want because they don't want to wait for it. So, you got to be careful. And they're not the only app that does. I'm not saying that this is the only app. I just make this point that you got to be careful on the apps you have because they will all collect data. It'll say it, though, in the use agreement. So when you download it, you are agreeing to allow them to do this to you. So, you got to take some responsibility for yourself. With that, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. As always, if you have thoughts, comments, questions, email me, Darren at thecyberguy.com. You can check me out on LinkedIn or Substack or wherever. I appreciate you taking the time to download, to listen, to pass information to others. As you go through your day, know that knowledge is protection. If you can understand the threats targeting you, you can assess your risk, proceed wisely. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back again on Friday.
Cyber Smart Morning News is written and produced by Cyber Guy Productions. Feel free to email thoughts, comments, or suggestions to Darren at thecyberguy.com. Or follow Darren on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/DarrettMott. Thanks for listening.